Hello, thank you for joining our webinar today. This is Joe Papano from Fiberlink Communications. I'm happy to introduce today our first guest speaker for the More webinar series. Today we have Brian Musthaler, who's a principal analyst at Essential Solutions. You may also know Brian from his work at Network World, where he frequently is an article contributor. And Brian's going to speak today about managing merger risks and specifically best practices for how IT organizations manage through an M&A process. And Brian's experienced IT practitioner on this and has led many IT organizations through M&A events. So we've got really some great content and a highly qualified and experienced speaker who's going to share some of his experiences with all of us. Thanks, Brian, for joining today.
Thank you for that introduction. When you look at my background, I spent 15 plus years in merger and acquisition as relates to audit, strategic development, being mergers and acquisitions, and IT strategic planning. And I've been involved in dozens of assessments and have been on both sides of the acquisition process, for as an acquirer and two as a organization being acquired. The challenges that I found for me as an assessor and an implementer of a plan was getting all the information needed to assess an IT organization without increasing the staff's apprehension level. 2, assessing the operational controls and risks in a timely manner, having visibility into the entire organization, and then with all that information developing a strategy to mitigate any risks so that we can attain the merger benefits as quickly as possible, and lastly, by doing all these things without disrupting the overall organization's workflow. This is a tall order whenever you consider that you only have a few months from the time of the board of approval to the actual merger date. And today, with the increasing size of the mobile workforce utilizing laptops and smart devices, this is making the entire process even harder. Traditionally, there are 3 phases of an acquisition process: due diligence, pre-merger, and post-merger. I'm going to focus primarily on the pre- and post-merger phases. The due diligence phase is where the acquiring organization gathers all publicly available information to see if financially it appears that a potential acquisition fits within their specific strategic plans and it's going to bring value to the organization. Whenever it comes to the pre and post, it's primarily from an IT perspective a controls examination or review based upon utilizing a recognized governance program such as COBIT. And the COBIT framework is going to allow the acquiring organization to look at the IT processes and how they're delivered, so that to provide assurance that the business needs are going to be able to merge with the stated objectives of the actual merger. And COBIT provides a structured framework of defined controls and security and process governance. So it's a tool that's being utilized by the assessors or auditors to help them identify control issues within the company's IT infrastructure, and also helps them corroborate any of their specific findings that they may have during the pre-merger phase. And throughout this evaluation, scrutiny is going to be placed on key risk factors such as information security, staff flight, as well as compliance adherence. During the post-merger phase, which is after the actual merger date has publicly transpired, that IT is going to have to do 3 primary roles. First, they're going to need to continue to deliver all the operational services and capabilities. And fulfilling this role may seem to be simple, but in reality it's not. You have 2 functions that potentially, more than likely, are going to have different cultures, capabilities, processes, systems, services, everything. And as a result, it is likely that the acquired organization's operating model is going to be at odds with the new model. And yet, despite these issues, the business cannot experience any degradation of service. 2, we need to be able to enable the integration of the business, that most mergers' intended synergies rely on IT support in the form of connectivity between the assets, people, and application support in this shared service environment. And the challenge here is going to be the sheer volume of work, and all of the discretionary work is going to need to be prioritized to assure that information technology concentrates solely on the highly tactical and strategic projects. And lastly, there has to be a source of cost savings. That there's going to be some synergies, such as the migration to a single ERP package or a financial application. And this is going to provide your long-term strategic savings. On the other hand, the consolidation of your commodity functions, your asset functions, are going to provide a short-term immediate savings. That whenever you look at a rule of thumb for mergers, organizations are expecting ongoing information technology savings of 15 to 30% of the pre-merger information technology costs. Simultaneously fulfilling all 3 of these roles is not going to be an easy task for IT. So achieving these IT synergies complicates the overall delivery of operational services and capabilities. By enabling the integration of the business could require investments that are going to slow the overall achievement of the cost savings. And given the restraints of budget, resources, and management, the sheer volume of work associated with this enabling of the merger is going to make maintaining your operational services a struggle. But before any of the merging of organizations can take place, you're going to need to know what you're getting, and you're going to need visibility to allow you to assess your risks and then manage these risks. When you look at the pre and post phase, ultimately you have to be able to assess your risk and manage your risks. And to do that, organizations utilize COBIT to utilize a risk management approach to their evaluation of an organization. And think about it, really, a merger has a lot of unseen risks associated with them, that organizations really need to have an open mind to assume that they're not going to find anything wrong whenever they're doing this evaluation. So as an acquirer, you need to know what software you're purchasing is licensed, and also if you're dealing with any proprietary or intellectual property, you need to make sure that there's no encumbrances. I've experienced that during a merger where there was some encumbrance on a proprietary homegrown application that had to do with a external license, and that soured the entire deal, even after we had gone to the board of directors to sell them on the idea of the merger, and it was a deal killer. During this assessment phase, you're going to have your IT staff and audit staff are going to be systematically evaluating the acquired organization's IT function in detail, utilizing a standard such as COBIT for their framework, as we touched upon earlier. And they're going to be identifying all the significant risks that need to be mitigated, including compliance, operational and strategic risks, so that the IT function of the acquired organization can be relied upon to meet the combined company's business objectives. And I talked about compliance, that there's going to be no free pass given if there's a breach in compliance or security during a merger. But in order to do this, you need to have visibility into that environment. And this is especially true whenever you're dealing with the mobile workforce. Continuing with assessing your risk, that in order to assess the environment, one needs to have visibility into that environment. And this is especially true with the mobile workforce, as I said earlier, that we have to be able to establish a hardware-software baseline so that we know exactly what we have. We have to be able to also evaluate the security and policy management to assure that each endpoint is appropriately configured, secured, backed up, etc. And we have to be able to take this baseline and then compare it to the strategic platform and software plan. Ultimately, we're looking at reducing costs via licensing, the elimination of outdated, unused, and unneeded tools, and by having one common platform. During the merger, that we're going to be evaluating the security and policy management to assure each endpoint is appropriately configured, secured, backed up, etc., to assure that data is encrypted, that we have data loss prevention, data leak protection in place, and that data is appropriately being backed up. Assuring that we have connectivity and monitoring controls, so that we know who has remote access via VPN as well as a mobile NAC, and to assure that we have continuity in place, that there is a standard operating platform, remote policy enforcement, backup, and everything that I just described is all seamless to the end user as well as to IT. When you look at all the activities that take place during the pre and post merger, that it's primarily focused on getting the organization together as quickly as possible, but in underlying that, we have to be able to minimize exposure to any disruption in productivity, any data loss, as well as compliancy issues. That the merger of two IT functions during the mergers, it's a process fraught full of difficulties. And in the interest of speed, decisions are often made without the benefit of having complete information. That I've been in that situation before where I did not have a complete picture of what was going on in each individual remote location of one merger. I was just given a base of that. This is what we have in our remote locations. In reality, there was additional hardware and software that was in place, and in reality, in one instance, we were relying on proprietary software in that organization, and if we would have known that, it would have been a game changer in how we approached what we were doing. Also, we have to be able to do this integration quickly so that we can achieve value, and this is many times perceived as being at odds with reducing any of the transition risks, like I was talking about the three above, being disruption of productivity, data loss, and compliance. But in order to mitigate all of these prospective risks, you have to have that visibility into the entire infrastructure, as well as the workforce computing, so that we can greatly reduce any disruption in both IT as well as end user productivity, as well as minimizing the potential risk for data loss, as well as compliance to both internal as well as external regulatory requirements. I hope what I presented gives you a high-level flavor of what transpires during the merger process from this standpoint of evaluating an organization as far as what is in place, what risks are associated with how the organization is operating, as well as any compliancy-like issues. But in order to do that, you have to have that complete visibility into the entire organization's data processing functions, and it's truly more challenging whenever you're dealing with the mobile workforce today, and specifically as it relates to laptops as well as smart devices. With that, I'm going to turn this back over to Joe. Thank you.
Brian, thanks so much. That was great information, and I think anybody who's been in the IT business for any length of time has been on one side or the other of a merger or an acquisition. So it's certainly information that you will put into practice at some point in your career. A couple of wrap-up items, and then we'll let everyone get going. The webinar will be posted next week on the Master Center, which is our online community for mobile IT experts. So hopefully you'll visit us there, and you'll find this webinar posted there as well as all of our earlier webinars. If you would like some more information about our topic today, you can feel free to contact Brian or myself. Our contact information is right here, and we'd love to hear from you. Thanks again for attending, and have a good day.